In high school, I had a pretty skewed idea of what it meant to be a woman. I cared a lot about my appearance. I wore a lot of makeup. I was kind of just like beaten into submission by a lot of judgmental girls that I went to high school with. I used to be friends with a girl once who told me like to wear darker makeup, and she'd comment on things that I'd eat at lunch, like how much of it I would be eating. High school, like in the early like 2010s, that was when Netflix became popular, like instant streaming Netflix, and there were shows on Netflix I remember that I would watch where like the female characters would either be like total nasty like snakes or these like sexy love interests of male protagonists. And so those were like the ideas of women that I had growing up, which I think definitely sort of made me feel like I had these unrealistic expectations to live up to as a woman. When I got to college in August of 2016, I decided to sign up for a pre-orientation hiking program at UNH, and I had so much fun that whole week. Like, I was following my passions of loving being outside and hiking, camping, and I just felt so free and alive that whole week. And I remember looking at myself in the reflection of this like shop in North Conway, and I looked at myself and I was kind of covered in dirt and sweat, and I just felt like a completely different person than I was in high school in the best way, and I felt like that was the kind of person who I wanted to be in college. This hiking program was also where I met my closest friends that I had freshman fall, and they were all boys. They seemed very free to me. They ran down rocky mountainsides, they laughed like nobody was watching, they ate like animals. They were kind of gross, but like in a fun way. And they were honestly everything that I wanted to be, everything that was the opposite of the person I wanted to leave behind, my high school self. So they became my closest friends. One day, one of my close guy friends, his name was Will, he's told our little group, there were 5 of us, he was like, hey, we should do this trail run and bridge jump some afternoon this week. And they were always up to stuff like this. They were big adrenaline seekers. They liked doing things that made them feel alive. And I kind of had a taste of what that was like during our pre-orientation week together, and I wanted to chase that feeling the way that they were chasing it, and I wanted to fit in really well with them. So I agreed to it. I was like, what better opportunity to show that I'm also into this stuff, that I'm as physically capable and as strong as these guys who I want to spend my time with. I was like really eager to prove my manliness, for lack of a better term. And I was pretty scared. The idea of this long run and bridge jump was kind of intimidating to me, but I was sold in that moment. So we decided to go on a Wednesday afternoon in late August, and it was like 90 degrees, 100% humidity kind of weather. And we met at Hoko at the dining hall, and we started our run. And these guys were really fit, like scary fit. And I mean, I'm a long distance runner, but they were really fast. So we were like sort of speeding towards this bridge, and I was at the back of the pack, sort of just trying to hang in there, although I was dying. It was pretty hard. It was horrible, actually. If you know what it's like to be the slowest person in a pack and trying to keep up, you know that your whole body is just on fire and your stomach feels like it's gonna drop, and at the same time your ego is telling you that if you stop, like, you're gonna make a fool of yourself. If you like show weakness, it's not gonna be acceptable. So I was just kind of fighting with that, and they'd check back every so often. They'd turn around and be like, you good? And I'd be like, yeah, I'm fine. But I wasn't. But I pretended like I was, because it felt really important to me in that moment. And finally we got there after like 4.5 miles. We got to the bridge. And it was huge. It was horrifying. It was like this big, old, red, rusty trestle train bridge that sits up like 30 feet over the Lamprey River. And it's covered in graffiti that just like has horrible words written on it. It's kind of funny actually, but I don't remember a lot of what the words said, but I remember that day it kind of felt like they were just warnings written all over the bridge, like, don't jump, this is stupid. And I remember the first moment that I stood on the edge of the bridge and looked down to see the water below, and 30 feet doesn't seem like that much when you think like 30 feet, it's about as tall as a telephone pole. But in that moment it felt like a mile of a drop. Like, I was looking down, and in that moment I remembered my fear of heights, my fear of doing illegal things, my fear of the feeling of falling. This was really not my place to be. I don't even really like water that much. So that was a pretty tough moment for me to realize what I was about to do was like not anything that I would choose to do on any other day. But I definitely felt like it was a little too late to back down, and I didn't want to seem like I was chickening out or like I was like being a girl. And so I decided, okay, I'm gonna do this. So everybody was like taking their shirts off and getting ready to jump, taking their shoes off, and I realized, oh shit, like I'm wearing baggy clothes, I'm gonna have to take off like my shirt and my shorts. And you know, it's just like wearing a bathing suit, but I felt so vulnerable in that moment because I felt like I was just exposing like my girlness, even though I was just trying to blend in as one of the guys. And I don't even think that they noticed because it wasn't really like, there wasn't any sexual tension, like we were all just buddies. But I just felt like I was removing that layer of, like, I'm a dude too. So the guys started jumping, and I was sort of off to the side feeling vulnerable and scared. I was standing on the edge of the bridge, and I just kept counting myself down, like 3, 2, 1, jump. And I'd do that over and over again, just hoping that maybe I'd just jump one of the times when I told myself to jump. But I could not get myself to do it. I kind of had this image of myself in that moment where I thought there was just so much, I was putting so much pressure on myself. I thought that if I didn't jump, then I would be staying in that high school version of myself, like that girl who I detested, or if I jumped, then I was one of the boys. So I was in that limbo, standing on the edge of the bridge, unable to make a decision of whether or not to jump. And I kept counting myself down, 3, 2, 1, jump. 3, 2, 1, jump. And then all of a sudden I was just plummeting and I didn't even really notice that I jumped until I was falling. I think it was an accident, honestly. Like I just accidentally stepped off, and I was so startled when I was falling that I inhaled water when I hit the water, and I came up and I was like choking, and the guys said that I was completely pale. They thought they were gonna have to come in and pull me out. But once I sort of like caught my breath and got all the water up, I felt so high, just on adrenaline, on life. I couldn't believe that I jumped, couldn't believe that I'd made it. And so when we started running back, we were all really high on adrenaline, and I felt really good for like the first 2 miles. But then once the excitement had worn off, I just felt, I could feel my body just like rejecting everything that I'd just done. I felt like everything felt like lead. If you're a runner and you know that like when you're really tired, your body just feels like really heavy and like you can't move it. We decided to get a celebratory Holloway Commons dinner, as you do as freshmen. And we were kind of bragging about the whole thing. We were like, yeah, we jumped off the trestle train bridge. And that was really fun. It was nice. It felt good to do that. And I totally felt like one of the dudes when we were doing that. But it's funny that in that moment I felt like I'd transitioned into this college version of myself as like one of the dudes, and like I was no longer this high school girl. But at the same time, I'd totally rejected any signs that my body was giving me to stop, to take care of myself, to be kind to my body. I put my health at risk for just the sake of fitting in with these guys. For what? I don't really know. It's funny to look back at that time 3.5 years ago, and well, it's not funny, it's mostly just sad, because I see myself as the kind of person who would jump off of a bridge if their friends did. That day, I think I tried to jump to prove that I was a part of something. I wanted to prove that I belonged with and could keep up with the level at which these guys were performing. And I was kind of in this proving game with myself, proving that I could do something. And that's a game that you're never ever gonna win. And hearing so much negative language and seeing so much negative presentation of women in the media kind of made me feel like I needed to be more manly to sort of get away from that stigma and to be considered acceptable or like worthy in some ways. And so I sort of engaged in this proving game of like, I can keep up with these boys, I can fit in with the boys, I can be a boy. When I look back at the day that I jumped off of the bridge, it makes me sad to see how much I struggled with my own identity as female and like what that meant to me. And I know that I'm not the only girl who has sort of been through this like struggle of trying to cover up their own femaleness in order to prove their worth to themselves or to others. But maybe instead of hurting ourselves or doing things that we're not comfortable doing, we could just continue along the bridge and explore who we might be and the freedom we might be able to feel on the other side of that bridge.